Okay, hello and welcome to Meet Roy Assembly Video Part 2. This video mainly has to do with assembling the hand and in particular the thumb. So you will have received a package that contains all the components for a hand kit. It's either a hand itself or part of an arm kit. So we'll go ahead and unpack that stuff and take a look. It will include a long 5-pocket package and 2 smaller ones. This smaller package is the parts that make up our palm. Those will be in the next video along with the extra palm servo, so we can take those parts and set them aside for now. And this video is going to be concentrating on the large 5-pocket bag here. The index, middle, ring, and pinky finger all should be assembled by now. So using the initial finger assembly video, you can assemble all 4 of those fingers. They're identical in their assembly process. So if you haven't done that yet, go ahead and go back and do your assembly on those and then come back to this video. This video particularly is going to talk about the thumb kit, which is right here, and there's a few new parts in the thumb kit that we need to talk about. So let's go ahead and get that out. I have one here. So the thumb kit, again, has all your laser cut parts, a hardware bag, and a servo. So we're going to set our servo aside, our hardware bag aside, and take a look at our parts. Now, again, you will want to go ahead and lightly sand out these parts. Not going to do much of that. Not going to show that because we've already done it. We're just going to move straight on to assembly. So first thing we can do is we can organize our parts in a few little piles here. First off is these sections of the finger that you will recognize. Those are the actual finger joints for the thumb. You'll notice there's one less section because the thumb is only these 2 joints here. You have those 4 side plates, you have your linkage plate, and then you'll also find 3 little circles. So I'm going to set those guys aside up top, and that'll be when we actually assemble the thumb. Then you'll have your thumb base, which will be your 2 D-shaped components and your base plate for them with the single hole. You'll be familiar with this. This is exactly the same as an index finger or a middle finger or all the other fingers. These are the same parts. So we're going to set those aside. And that leaves us with this little stack of parts, which basically makes up a thumb kit. You'll have a tool for assembling the D-shaped parts for gluing them in position, so that can go there. And that ends up with these leftover parts. Now, of these parts, we're particularly going to work with this flat plate, these 2 little hook parts, the slotted base plate, and our 2 little reinforcement brackets. These 2 pieces will come in a minute. I'm going to set those aside. Now, this assembly right here is the first time you have to consider right or left. How you build this particular portion of the thumb determines whether you're building a right hand or a left hand or a right thumb or left thumb. So when we lay this plate down and look at it from the top, if it's in this orientation with the servo offset to the left a little bit, that means we are going to build a right thumb. So this orientation is right thumb. If we flip it over and assemble it from this side, this is going to be a left thumb. So you can look at the exploded view and I'll show some images in there that kind of help explain that. But this is left, right. So we're going to go ahead and build a right thumb. So that's the orientation we're going to use. So basically when we place our parts, we're going to place them in the top of this plate from here, and that is going to drive the thumb. So we need to go ahead and get out a little bit of our hardware because we need to make sure that we insert our binding post before we start assembling the thumb. So I'm just going to dump that out. I don't have my handy dandy ring. Make a pile of that stuff over there. And I'll dig through the pile and find our 2 shortest binding post pieces. So we'll go ahead and start with our base piece. And we'll take our binding post, and again, we want to look for the non-clean side of this part, and that's the side we press from. So the part that's a little ovaled there, we're going to go ahead and just press in that little binding post piece. Now, if you remember correctly from the other fingers, we've got to come in and we've got to trim out a little bit of our wood right in here to make this fit around that binding post a little better. So we'll have done that. You'll have done that 4 times on the last ones. And so you'll see that that guy would fit right on there. I'm not going to put it on quite yet, but I want to make sure we get that binding post placed in. Okay, so to start, you have these little hook shaped pieces. Now, this plate, the hooks, and these 2 gussets do not have an orientation as far as smooth side versus non-smooth side. They can only go in their position in one way, so you just kind of place them where they go and the smooth side ends up where it is. So again, it's more left or right than smooth versus not. So to start, we're going to start with our smaller of the 2 hooks, and you just kind of bring that guy in from the side and then press it down into those front 2 holes. You'll see there you got a little bit of a notch and a hole that correspond to that piece, and they line up nicely in there. And then you do the same thing with the back one. Now that back one is going to use this notch and that large hole back there. And again, I just kind of bring it in from the side, kind of line it up, get it level, and then just press it down into the plate. And those should both key in there pretty nicely. And what you're doing is you're creating the clevis that we're going to clamp on to create the pivot for the thumb to let you adjust this thumb in many positions. So those 2 pieces go on first. Next is going to be our small gusset pieces. Now, one of the gussets is blank and one of them has a notch in it. The blank gusset goes over here on the outside on the far side where it will not interfere with anything, and the notched gusset you can see will straddle right over top of that finger piece right there. So we're just going to kind of press that one down in nicely. Make sure you get it now all the way down in tight. Now again, be careful when you're pressing this stuff. You could fairly easily break it, and we don't want to do that. Get that one in. Now this one feels like it's going in a little tighter than I would like. I can't really get that in there as well as I would like to without pushing too hard. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little bit of work on this part. Now, you can go ahead and use your sanding pad, and basically what you're going to do is just kind of thin the piece out a little bit on the tab area. Maybe even thin it down on the length. But what I like to do for that detailed work is I actually went and swiped one of my wife's nail files here. So this works pretty good. So I'll just take it and I'll just kind of work the little bottom of that little tab right there. Maybe give it a little bit of a taper and maybe work some of the end of it off. Just kind of making that tab a slight bit smaller so that when I go to drop it into this hole, it wants to sit down in there nicely without pushing too hard. Because again, if we start pushing too hard, we have a tendency to break our parts. So you'll see there, we've inserted the 2 support tabs. Now all that's left to do is to go ahead and take this, this base piece with our nub facing out and just kind of slide it on in relation to those guys and just kind of press that whole thing together gently but firmly. And we're looking to get the tabs flush with our front pieces here. Okay, so again, like we did with the other fingers, we just kind of want to push everything. Make sure it's all sitting in there nicely. Everybody's sitting down tight. If you want, you can take this little thicker piece. You'll notice this is the first thick piece of material we have. This is a 6mm plywood versus a 3mm. That's going to key right in here between those 2 tabs. Just want to make sure that that fits in there okay. It's not tight. Everything is straight. So that fits real nicely. And then this part is pretty much ready to glue up. So I'm going to go ahead and get out again my thin super glue. And we're going to go ahead and just start. I usually like to start at the faceplate here. I just start dripping a little bit on the different joints. Kind of smoothing it around with the tip of the soldering, the glue thing. Now again, we're not concerned about gluing that aluminum binding post in place. That's actually okay. What we don't want to do is get the glue on the threads of the binding post. So what I'll do is I'll just go around, and again I like to go from the side that I can see the ends of the tabs and just kind of lay some glue in on all the different points, the joints I can get to, just a little bit at a time. Oh boy, a little bit much there. If you get a little too much, you can kind of just roll the part around and get it to skirt down all the different places. Now, this connection between this plate and this joint, I like to put a little glue right in there to try to kind of bind this brace to that hook piece there so that they kind of stick together. And again, we just kind of work our way around, a little bit of glue here, a little bit of glue there. I don't want to get crazy, but we want to make sure that it is going to hold for us. Okay, I think that's good on there. So we're going to go ahead and set that part aside to dry.